You have landed on The Substance. I'm your host, Philip Marinello, and I am glad you're here with us today. Here at The Substance, we are trying to be a bi-weekly podcast again. Just like the name indicates, we like to talk about things of substance here. Often topics related to faith, culture, the arts, really just trying to have conversations and look at things in relation to truth, goodness, and beauty. Previous guests include folks like Robert P. Jones, Justin Giboney, Propaganda, Sho Baraka, Tyler Huckabee, and Josh Nadeau of Sword and Pencil. We've got an extensive library. If you're new to the show, check it out and let us know what you think. This week, I'm really excited to put out my conversation with Jon Guerra. He is an artist and songwriter who I've followed for a while, and particularly with his project that we talked about this time, The American Gospel. I wasn't trying to hold it until election week, but it is an extremely opportune time, an opportune message. And like we talked about in the actual conversation, a lot of his audience, I mean, he's got audience all over the political and ideological spectrum, but I'm really hoping that the heart of some of the things he's talking about on this particular project, this short little EP, that it resonates and ministers to and edifies and helps folks who maybe not open to this message from folks outside the camp. So this was a really enjoyable conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So technically on this one, we will be recording the video, but that's only going to be used for snippets if I have time and attention for that. It's just going to be audio with
Totally.
the landscape being what it is. I have been told, hey, just record the video and then use it for like reels or whatever. And I'm like, then I got to make reels or like find somebody
Right.
to do
Yeah,
that.
totally. Everyone's always got ideas for more work you can do.
Yeah, like not to be like full of myself. Like I feel like I'm very good at a few things, but then it's like, oh, do a bunch of other stuff. Like if you want people to see the thing you're good at, you got to like learn all these other skills. I'm like, well, I also have a job and a family.
Totally, man. Totally. What is your job? What do you do for work?
I do sales and marketing primarily for
Cool.
remediation and construction companies. So like
Mm-hmm.
after disasters like floods and fires and stuff, we clean it up, put it back together.
Oh, nice.
And I just do a ton of networking out here. So I'm
In KC,
actually
right?
because
In
of Kansas City.
Kansas City, sweet.
So because of the podcast, I've also kind of wildly got a few doors opened up in the film world, and potentially by the end of next year, actual real things might come out with me as like creative producer titles. I might start getting a few of those.
Good for you, man. That's great.
Because I do really love that. I like music, but I'm very much like a moderate appreciator. Like film is my big art.
Yes.
Passion.
Beautiful. I just
As you can see by the overflow of my Blu-ray pile behind me.
Yeah, totally. I love it, dude. No, that's so great. I just did this event last night with Kathleen Norris and Gareth Higgins, who are putting out a book maybe in a month on film. The two of them. It's like a co-written book on kind of basically it follows a life. It's a cool concept. It follows a life from birth to death and different films that sort of in
touch
their
like
view,
different experiences there.
That's right. Yeah, and then they kind of
that.
respond and they little essays.
What's that called?
So it's what is it?
Or who are the authors again?
Kathleen Norris and Gareth Higgins. Kathleen Norris is kind of that like legendary spiritual writer. Gareth Higgins, I didn't know very well, but the two of them have a whole life in 12 movies.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I will definitely put that on my list. Maybe even reach out to the publisher and see if this.
Yeah, they would. I mean, they're definitely doing all the book stuff right now, so they would be amenable, I'm sure, to popping on.
And since we're on this, somewhat recent guest and then future guest pretty soon, one of my Kansas City critic friends, her name's Abby Olchesi. She just, I got an early copy. I think it comes out later this month is the launch. It's from IVP called Films for All Seasons, and it is a film watching guide through the church calendar.
Oh, love it.
It's like
5 films for Pentecost, 5 films for Lent, 5 films for Advent, stuff like that, and it's really good.
That's cool, man. Amazing.
Well, it's always like I love having a variety of people on, but I feel like my favorite conversations for the substance, and I mean probably in life too, are when I have people who are into the arts. Like it's just
Mm,
like your art is different than the art that I consume the most, but I love creative people who appreciate the
mm,
creative process and the works of others.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Art that you consume the most, would you say is film?
Oh yeah, easily.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah.
an app called Letterbox. It's basically like Goodreads for movies, and I'm at
Oh,
well over 200 movies for this year so far. Some of
so
those are
tell me, as a
shorts.
dad of two kids, where do you carve the time?
Sure. Some of those are definitely shorts.
Okay,
Some of those are like stand-up specials and documentaries that I stream while doing like dishes or housework.
got it. Yeah,
But I am, in addition to the podcast, like I'm actually one of those people who like gets up early sometimes because I
yeah,
I fall asleep sometime at like 9 or 10. But
yeah.
sometimes like I will look okay, and I also on this wonderful Letterbox sponsor the show if you want. We've had actually a few of
Nice.
their employees on previously, but Letterboxd,
It's cool.
you can make lists, and one of my favorite features is you can sort by length. So I have a list of like under 90-minute movies I want to watch, and I just set an
Nice.
alarm sometimes for like 5:15, and I get up and I get a movie in before my day starts. I'm
It's
committed.
awesome, dude. That's so good. That's where I find time to do. I probably mentioned that my last record was all written and recorded. I was getting up as early as like quarter to four
Whew.
sometimes because my girls get up so early. But it was the only time,
Dude,
man.
the little kids, man, when they start getting up, my little guy does get up at like 6:30 almost every day, and
Yeah.
it's a lot.
And just, I mean, she is just she's going. And my wife too, when she's up, she's up. It's just like full energy, full like, it's like on or off. There's no like gradient. I'm much more of like a gradient, like an oven. I just kind of have all these, but for them, it's like bing, and then so
Yep. No, it's a lot. It's great, but it's a lot. I did want to say, in doing my research on you, happy belated birthday. I saw that
oh,
you're a
thank you.
fellow September guy.
Yes. When is your birthday?
September 6th. And then my oldest son's is September 29th, so we just had his.
Nice. That's amazing.
It's the most popular month. All of us Christmas and New Year's babies.
I know. I know. I've always loved being a September. The fall in the Midwest was kind of my favorite. I'm
So
in
where did
Texas
you
now.
grow up in Chicago? I know you've got a lot of Chicago connections. Did you like grow up or spend a lot of time in
Um,
Chicago?
yeah, I did. Yeah, from born in California. I guess grew up until I was 11 in Houston. But really, what feels like home and where I came of age and where my parents still are and my oldest friends is just outside Chicago, a town called Wheaton, Illinois.
Okay, yeah.
And still there. My parents are still there. A bunch of friends still there. And that's kind of what, for some reason, that's what feels more like home and where I grew up than even Houston does.
Nice. Yeah, I we're in Kansas City, and Chicago is a place that we think very highly of. Like, I don't want to move, but like if we did, I was like, I mean, it's not a crazy difference, but like if we had to go
Yeah.
somewhere else, like I feel like I would cast a few votes for Chicago.
Yeah. Oh, from Kansas City, it's totally, I mean, it's basically just a slightly larger Midwest city, which
Yeah.
you get the seasons, you get the winters, you get general Midwesterny. Uh, I was going to say Midwesterny personality types. I was never one to think that the Midwest had like a
Sure.
thing in its personality. Never ever. Until I moved to Texas and then I realized, oh, there are some gaps in
Yeah.
the social rhythm that either I'm missing or they're missing or we're just missing each other. And it's just my wife and I just now chalk it up to the Midwest. I mean, and our friends here who are from the Midwest feel the same thing. And we
Oh,
all kind
I
of
imagine
commiserate.
so.
We're like, Yeah, I don't know, very basic
Well,
things,
and
but
actually, so shout out to my former co-host. He's actually over there with you. He left Kansas City and moved to Austin, I think like 3 years ago. So
okay,
he's out
cool.
there over near you. I forget what the name of his church is. Every time I go, I visit him. He is in, I don't want to dox him, but where is he? I always forget. Leander, I believe,
Oh yeah,
I think.
okay.
So that's him. I
It's
visit him.
northeast. Yeah, it's about 45 minutes to an hour northeast, sort of like just outside of Austin proper.
Yeah, we take
So
turns visiting
beautiful.
each other, but actually with the podcast, both Chicago and Austin, I'm hoping to do little mini trips to for various movie related festivals and ventures and things like that. Both of those towns are
Nice.
very great arts towns.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So, speaking of the arts, doing my research, I found out something very cool and also kind of funny, substance, lore, and history related. Doing a little bit of research on you, you've been involved in the film world a little bit. You did the music for Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life.
Yeah, my wife and I were a part of. So we were part of a crew, a
Or
composition
you did some
crew.
additional composing.
That's right. Yep. And we came down to Austin for a couple of years, for weeks at a time to work on the movie, and it was an experience I'll never forget. I mean, made some of my one of my closest friends I made through the film, and another one of my closest friends was already working on the film. And Valerie, my wife, is a brilliant violinist and violist, and so we just got to work on this incredible project. For people who've seen the film, they know what a what an incredible film it is. I mean, it's breathtaking. So
No, it's a staggering movie. That was, like I told you off air, for listeners that haven't been there from the very beginning, that was our first movie we did when we relaunched after our unintentional break. And I feel like
yeah,
every time I revisit it or every time I kind of dwell on it, and I mean, especially it kind of goes in with a lot of the themes of your new project, like
yeah,
it's just such a beautiful, heartbreaking, kind of prescient story, just kind of showing how
mm-hmm.
things don't really change. Like
Mm.
the patterns of life and the hardships and the temptations and um, compromises or consequences for not
Mm-hmm.
compromising, things like that. That it's there's nothing new under the sun. But yeah, it's an incredible movie. So tell me, how did you initially, like? I don't want this to turn into a Hidden Life podcast, and I'll try to watch the clock and not spend
Sure.
too much. But I'm fascinated. Like,
Yeah,
how did you get into that? How did you get kind of tapped for that?
yeah. One of my friends was working as a producer on the film, and kind of pulled us in. We got to meet Malik and his wife when they were shooting in Italy, and thought that that was kind of going to be the end of our interaction with the film. Got to go on set. I mean, on
In
location, really,
Italy?
in Italy.
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. It totally would have been enough, And then
Yeah.
when they were looking for music, um, Malik had remembered when we met that my wife and I said we were musicians, and so um, he asked my friend Josh if we'd be willing to try some stuff. And um, Terry kind of likes to find. I think he likes to work with people who don't uh, you know the tropes or know the scene. He kind of likes working with new people.
Sure, so that you don't
And
kind of unconsciously just regurgitate the same old, same old.
probably, yeah, probably, and probably because we're just like willing to do anything, and we certainly were, and made some stuff that he really connected to. He connects to my wife's violin playing. Um, it was the feeling in her playing, which is very profound. She's just excellent and brings a lot of emotion in her playing. So we did just hours of music for it, and some of that ended up in the film. And we went to the Cannes Film Festival for the premiere, and my wife was, oh man, 7 months pregnant with our
Oh,
daughter. And
wow.
no, I guess she couldn't fly that. Maybe she was like 6 months. Let's see, she was born in October. This was, yeah, it was like in the summer, it was June to, anyway. Um, So that was one,
But she was
like,
pregnant.
she
But I
was
mean,
very pregnant.
if Terrence Malick invites you to Cannes for a premiere of a movie you worked on, I mean, that's
We're
not
gonna
one you
get
want to
there.
pass up.
We're gonna be
Yeah.
there. Yep. But
Wow.
that was insane, man. Just watching, the film, watching the final cut, because it had been getting edited up until the last minute, and so
Sure, he
watching the
tends to do
final
that.
there was just like, holy cow. And as a film, I mean, I can't think of a, not just because we worked on it, but I really can't think of a more powerful film that, uh, like you said, is suited to the temptations and opportunities of our current moment, right? There's so many forces pulling us in every direction, and uh, it's a portrayal of goodness, of that when it doesn't make sense, which, um, that's often where we all get off the goodness train, when it starts to not make sense with the other values that we're, whether consciously or unconsciously, uh, committed to. But when goodness gets hard, when our life's on the line, when our reputation is on the line, when, um,
When our
you
community,
know,
like,
community,
community is
yep,
a part of life, and that's such an interesting thing, I think, with 3 songs on your project and some of those themes, like, it really is, it's not new. Like, there are unique
yeah,
things technologically, societally, economically that
hmm,
make different things challenging in unique ways, but, like,
hmm,
a lot of the challenges of our time aren't new,
right,
which in a way is comforting, but yeah, your new project deals with that quite a bit. And I mean, here on the Substance, man, oh man, we've talked about this a ton, like how where we are matters, and
yeah,
because of the way that a particular strain of Christianity or purported Christianity, in the way
mm,
that's commingled with other identities and tribes, like that has made a lot of people's life very hard.
yeah. No, exactly. No, exactly. Um, yeah, the EP was something I was actually overseas at the time this summer when I wrote those songs, and was kind of waking up to news, and there was so much happening this summer with, Biden pulling out of the race, and wars, and, uh, headlines. I mean, it's we're still living in it now at the time of the recording of this podcast, but, um, when you read the Gospels, Jesus often just says true things that are simple on the surface, but a million miles deep when you think about them. And then when you think about them in context of the, ancient Near East, it's like it's a whole new. It's like he's just the master of saying things, um, without saying them, in a way. And, so, yeah, the project was kind of an attempt to just bring the voice of Christ into the conversation of 2024 politics. Um, and that was even one of the songs, was like, that what would Jesus even say, if he were being interviewed by the New York Times or Fox News? What would he even, you know what would he even, whose side would he take, or where would he be on the issues? And kind of just really through the course of writing that song, often this happens to me a lot, where the song kind of tells me what it wants to say. Sort of, you know came to realize that I do think Christ isn't reduced by our categories. He's constantly trying to lift us up out of our categories by recognizing, him, and creating a new, just making the conversation about higher things, and, that have very real import. But first and foremost, it's like, where is your attention? And, so I, yeah, wrote these songs very quickly, and, it was kind of, a little. I've written a few political songs that are speaking to faith and public life the past few years,
Sure.
and it's not a new thing for me, but it is always like, when you kind of are, um, when you politics is the religion of, I would say politics and technology is the religion of our time, like twin religions,
Sure.
cut from the same cloth. And when you step into the temple, which is public discourse, it's like anything can happen. These are sacred cows. So you always feel a little bit like, oh, who am I? But it's been wonderful. The release has been great, and you know, just glad I put it out.
So you said you were out of the country when you worked on this project. Where were you?
Yeah, my family, we spent a little time in Greece this past summer. It was
Very nice. So it's just family
wonderful.
vacation.
Just family. Yeah. I mean, we were still like I had my mics and was writing, but we
Right.
we did take
Yeah, you're an
we
artist.
exactly right. We had a good bit of time when my wife and I weren't working, but both of us kind of working for ourselves. We logged back in from Greece for a bit of time, and yeah, it was good.
So I mean, that must be jarring. Like it's jarring living here, and then every morning and throughout the day, moment by moment,
Yeah.
getting updates um, domestically and abroad. But yeah, what was that like? We've had quite a tumultuous, and we've had quite a tumultuous time, kind of since 2016, but then even more so since 2020. But like,
Yeah.
what was that like with all the genocide, a
Hmm.
contentious election year, um, kind of a history making shift
Yeah. Oh my
in an
gosh.
election year, all of these things. Like, what was that like for you guys? Because I mean, all of your friends and family and you guys, like when you come back to
Yeah.
this, it's like this is gonna drastically affect your life.
Yeah. I mean, couple things. It's both experiencing it as an American um, was like everybody who lives in this country. It's like, whoa, this feels, and especially we're all so, at least a lot of us. I shouldn't say we're all, but many of us who are keyed into headlines and what's happening in these major publications and what's happening in the election. It's like they have a certain amount of control over your psyche, and your
Absolutely.
anxiety. And so feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm at the whims of just these reporters, which is insane, and these people who are running for office. But at the same time, being overseas, it's like I could close the computer and in Greece, maybe go to the grocery store, go to the beach, whatever. And I'm now in a world, in a society that has nothing to do with those headlines.
Yep.
And it was very nice and refreshing and actually a good reminder that we're not the center of the universe. We're not the center of the world. We're not the center of time. We are not. It impacts us as Americans directly, so I'm not minimizing that. But there is also that little small paradigm shift is emblematic of a larger paradigm shift. Like places like Greece exist with a whole where in a place where American politics has very little import, and there's also a kingdom that exists in a place where American politics has no import at all. And that's actually, we're in that kingdom right now. And that's the kingdom that's actually going to outlast the American kingdom and every other kingdom that follows. And that's a true thing that we believe as Christians, that anybody who had assent to the creeds, anybody who has asked Jesus into their heart. I mean, this is this is Christianity 101, that we're a part of a kingdom. Um, and Jesus is the king, and it's not doesn't make it easier, doesn't make our Christian responsibility as Christians in this Babylon existence any less crucial or important, but it does. But I think we pay lip service to that without actually living the reality very much. At least we don't let the reality sink down to the level of our emotions or our psyches the way we let the news do.
Well,
And
it's interesting, right? Because like a lot of, regardless of your, and this is not at all a both sides statement, listeners, if you're going to get nervous at the beginning of this, I know sometimes I draw it out before getting to my point, but regardless of your political affiliation, I feel like that most people, to whatever level they're engaged, like would like give lip service or assent to, oh yeah, like this world, da 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 da, like, because like we know if you're a person of faith, if you subscribe to like any sort of real like spiritual theological beliefs, that there is more than just this. But like this is like
Very
imminent.
important.
This is the thing
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
right now. This is
yeah.
the thing that I can see, touch, smell, feel,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the thing that affects my comfort, my discomfort, and that of those who I love and care about. So like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I get it's understandable in a way to see how many who claim Christ and who claim yeah to follow Jesus, how sometimes they can really lose the plot in their pursuit of power and like kind of lose their minds in a way.
Mm,
And
yeah.
it's easy to mock, it's easy to deride. Sometimes I don't think those are even inappropriate reactions, but I mean it's a deeply sad thing, and doubly so it's a deeply shameful thing when people leave the principles of the message of Jesus to quote unquote like pursue the agenda that they have attached tribally to like Christianity or whatever.
Well, yeah, and I think the threat of superficiality has always been, we live on the surface of things, we feel things, and we experience things on the surface level. And the call of the kingdom is not to abandon the surface, but it's to create a different depth with the surface that we're living in. And the kingdom is a deeper kingdom. It's the kingdom of the world are superficial, and people who exist on that plane want to, um, of course they'd get pulled into those. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not, guilty of this either. But it is a, it's like we can, we we're content with staying on the surface, but the surface is what freaks us out, because the surface is what's passing. The surface is what's transitory. It's the and I don't, I'm not making a Gnostic deal here, but I'm very, I guess, Platonic in my ontology. If I'm going to bring out my philosophy degree here, but I do feel that that God is present to every single particle of physical reality at all times, and causing that thing to exist in a way that is mysterious. Um, and we as human beings are gifted with that knowledge, and gifted with being, somehow being able to permeate that superficial physical with that kind of deep, um, deeper spiritual reality, and I that it's without that kind of revelation and belief, I do think we perish, because we are not meant to simply live on the fleshly level. And but that's and take a diagnostic of our age and a diagnostic of our own inner life on any given day, would reveal that we are very superficial people. We do live on the surface, like you say, and that's very easy to do, because we are, we're not, we don't live in a world or an age that values higher things and deeper things. And
Well,
so I,
there's absolutely that, and I think in a way, maybe even a degree or two more worse, for lack of a better word, is the stuff you talk about in your first song, American Gospel, where not only that there is the temptation of like lethargy or non-engagement, but then there's the draw of engagement in the wrong things for the wrong reasons while thinking you're doing the right thing.
mm,
Like that's in my mind
yeah,
that's a bit worse.
right.
And we've
No,
seen
that's
the
a,
absolute havoc that has unleashed here in the US and all over.
yeah. What is it? I forget who said it. It's like the worst thing. I think it's Chesterton. Um, it's the worst things are not the worst things. the worst things are good things let loose without any sort of uh, telos or boundaries or something. It's the good intentions, it's the good desires that are divorced from any sort of understanding of how the world works or what the world is or where this whole thing is headed according to uh, God's plan. And not that we know it precisely, but you know what I mean, just sort of where, like, how do we
No, but
situate this life that we live in?
of
Yes.
like the ministry of Jesus, like I think about, I've been thinking about the Sermon on the Mount a ton lately, just as like this is the largest amount of instruction, like direct instruction that we've
Yeah.
got from Jesus. And like, I mean, so I've listened to it a couple weeks ago. Shout out to Sarah, one of our listeners, who one of our weekend like kind of polls, hey, what's everybody been reading, watching, listening to, just kind of share stuff. She shared yours. Actually, when did the EP come out?
It came out maybe 2.5 weeks ago, maybe
Did it come out on the
2 weeks.
6th? I feel like it might
Let me
have.
open the
Yeah,
old
came out on the 6th,
streaming to
came out on my
see.
birthday.
September 6th.
Yep, that's me. So yeah,
Nice.
so she shared that and I checked it and we played it. And then halfway through, so I have 2 kids. We were playing it, the whole family was there, and my wife stopped it. And our 6-year-old is like, comprehension is very high.
Yeah.
She's like, hey, look, so this is not like, this whole point of this song is that these are the opposite, like trying to
Yeah.
explain the concept to him. But I mean, like, blessed are the powerful, blessed are the rich, blessed are the merciless and the hypocrites, for they will inherit the empire's passing. It's the American gospel. And I feel like that very, very beautifully and horribly, you can
It's a
chalk
simple
so
device
much up
that
to it.
says a lot. Yeah. Yeah. I was actually
Like, that's
surprised
it.
that,
That's it.
yeah, I was surprised that simple, device somebody hadn't done that already, but it really, actually somebody did send me a poem from like the 70s where it was like the opposite, Psalm 23, but the opposite. It was like, labor is my shepherd, I shall always be in want. I'm made
Yeah,
to
that's
keep
very,
working and never rest. It was
that
I'd never
feels
heard that, but
very, yeah, send that to me if you find it.
yeah,
Seems
yeah,
very prescient now. But yeah, no, it seems like a sacred version of like, this is America. Like, I
yeah,
feel like
yeah,
that's it. That is
yeah,
it. And it's horrible.
totally. And it's funny, man. It's like, again, Christ, it's a beautiful thing to Jesus is a very tremendous person, like tremendous speaker, tremendous, and the gospels are, uh goodness gracious, are just tremendously beautiful, brilliant, multi-layered books. And to hear Christ speak and just to place some of these things, um like to not divorce the message of the gospels and the gospels themselves from having from the plane of life in which we have these political conversations is so important. With since the yeah, for years and years now we've been relegating religion and spirituality and Jesus to this kind of corner of the world. Like, okay, you have something to say here, but you don't really have much to say over, like, let the real experts figure out what to do with governance and figure out what to do with um, society. And but no, it's very much like the way of Jesus, the way of the cross is a politic. It is a way to organize the world. And
Well, and kind of on that,
just singing that, that
yeah,
literally the song is, to me, is just the Beatitudes. It's just, and
but
it's,
reversed. Yeah,
but reversed, right? But even that, it's like in what's latent in the Beatitudes is the opposite. Blessed are the poor. It's
exactly.
like there's rich people hearing this, like, wait a second, I'm not poor. You just imagine yourself hearing these things. Uh, Blessed are the mourners. Like, well, I'm not mourning. Like, am I blessed? Like, what the heck? So, yeah, and It's funny. Somebody was asking me like, man, you really like kind of jokingly, but like, man, why do you hate America so much? Like, I don't. I actually love. I love this. I love living here. But I don't find it beautiful. I don't find these philosophy like I love trying to love God more and Jesus more, and I'm trying to be more and more.
Yeah, that's I
Um,
got the I don't know if you're familiar with Propaganda, the
mm-hmm,
artist. He's been on the show a few times, and I got his hoodie. The I don't hate America, but I demand she keeps her promises. And I always tease
mm.
my wife that I'm going to wear it to our family gatherings at like 4th of July and stuff like that. But I'm trying to keep the peace.
That's good.
But yeah, no, it's and are those types of statements from people of faith or people who would consider themselves people of faith?
Yeah, for sure. Yep, yep, yep.
And that's so
Um,
predictable, and it's so challenging, right?
yeah,
Because you're like, so the implication then is that this like domineering empire is of God. Like the
yeah,
the the things that go into a domineering empire, like the capitalism that crushes people's lives and things like that is a blessed thing of God. Like that's kind of the unspoken implication. But like a lot of people have never really considered that in a lot of ways.
yeah. And it's a again, it's hard to really believe that there is an alternative that is actually better and deeper and longer and more satisfying. We live in the most anxious society generation, most depressed generation, most lonely. People are
Suicide
uh,
rates are
suicide
bananas.
rates are it like everything, all the metrics and these are secular metrics. These are not from Christian. This is not like these are just like your standard. The Atlantic magazine or Fox News would go to these places and just this is what the world looks like, and it just begs the question like, well, what is it's not what is going on here, and here's the thing, man. What's nice about my job is being a poet and being a songwriter. I actually don't have to figure out how it practically works out in American politics. um, that's not what I've been called to do. you know the command that I have been given is to simply sing what I see,
Proclaim,
and
call
and
people
and and just
to
reflect, man,
consider.
just to be a mirror, just to kind of try to move closer to what I think the source of light is, and just let myself and let the songs be whatever might come, and so I have
That
no
works
answers
very
for the
well then.
practicality.
That
Yeah,
works very well then
exactly.
because I feel like my spiritual gifting with is like the intermediary, like finding great things and then trying to put them in front of people, being like, consider this.
Hmm.
So when I crowdsource some questions, Allison, this is perfect, kind of for what you were just talking about. Allison reached out and just said, "Hey, I really liked what he was doing with the World Relief Organization and Let Us Be the Church. Like, talk about kind of how that project came together and kind of what, if any, kind of results you've seen from that."
Yeah, no, that was really fun. So World Relief is an amazing relief organization that's doing great work around the world. They just celebrated their 80th anniversary this year, and they commissioned me to write a song in celebration of the last 80 years and kind of praising their values. And my wife used to work there. It was her first job out of college, and I've known several people who've worked there through the years. So it was a real honor to kind of dig into what they're up to. And so, yeah, I wrote the song, sent it to them. They loved it. And we just finished the recording, and it's coming out in 2 days.
Oh,
Um,
very nice. So by the time this is out, it'll be out
It'll
there.
be out. Yep. Let Us Be the Church. It's kind of out under World Relief and Jon Guerra. And the song is, the mission of World Relief is basically to take it's an organization that is built around what they believe to be the uh, command to the church to be present to the vulnerable and the weak and the poor in society, not just their own, but the world. That famous Josephus quote talking about the early Christians, he's marveling at the fact that they not only take care of their own lepers, they take care of the lepers of the pagans as well. And when the Visigoths descended and sacked Rome, or whoever was out, I don't even know if that's accurate, but I think he's like, yeah, that the people that were left over like were completely decimated, and the Christians were the ones who took care of them and took them in. So they take that and they're like, yeah, that's a great witness. Let's follow that example. And that's kind of what they built their organization around. And so the song is just, let us be the church, let us take courage, let us see Christ in his people. Um, the fruits of faith are pure and unstained, to serve orphans and widows in their pain, to keep ourselves from pride, uh, and in trial and temptation to remember. I mean, that's literally quoting James, but that is the second verse of the song. And then, this idea that Hopkins has that poem, Christ plays in 10,000 places through the features and forms of men's faces. And this, Christ, give us eyes to see Christ in all people. Like, because that's what Jesus says, that when I was sick, you visited me. When I was thirsty, it's like, well, what are you talking about? Well, look at these people. Like, they're there, and Christ is there somehow. That's, again, the superficial and the depth thing. If you're
The
only looking at
mysterious, yeah.
yeah, it's like Christ is somehow mysteriously present in those people. And so the song mentions that too. And I'm excited about the release and just being able to support them in a very small way, and them having the vision to kind of partner with kind of a middle of the small time indie devotional music songwriter. Yeah, it was great.
No, that's great. And I mean, so Sarah, who connected us on Instagram back, talking about that mystery, she was curious. I mean, I'm sure this is a question you've gotten before, but recently, either historically or recently, like, what kind of practices do you do and engage? Like, how do you kind of tap into the mysterious, like, with like reading, poetry, music? Like, how do you kind of get on that wavelength for your creation?
Yeah, solitude and silence. I have always, not always, but have the last bunch of years been very important. It's one of those things that um, you don't notice. You don't notice the near-term benefits, but over the long term, you start to kind of recognize maybe there's a part of you deep inside you that's kind of being grown and hewn and tended to, that is um, a little bit sturdier than what's happening outside, and it becomes this kind of rock and this source of um, stability in your life. And I think that comes directly through solitude and silence, and in that, turning your attention to God in that space, which isn't easy. And our minds they flitter all about, and that's okay, that's part of it too, but just kind of regularly trying to take a second. And that's hard when you have kids in your, even if you don't have
Boy,
kids,
oh
it was,
boy.
goodness.
Yeah.
But and then, yeah, reading in different scenes of my life, I've had more time to do it in this season. It feels less, but I'm always going through, books that mean a lot to me. And especially in the summers when my wife and I try to slow down our pace, I usually spend a couple hours in the afternoon when our daughter's either in her nap or her quiet rest. And um, my wife is pregnant, and she was napping in the afternoon too. So all summer, 2 to 4, I was just getting it in. It was great.
That's fantastic. So with the okay, this song, hold on here. So it's the single is American Gospel, but it's also called the American Gospel EP. With the project, your 3 songs, was there maybe like a line or a verse that you felt particularly, like, I'm sure it's all your baby, but like, was there a part
Sure,
that you
yeah.
felt particularly satisfied or was particularly challenging? Like, what were some of the standout bits for you in the creation of this 3-song project?
That's a good question, man. You know, I obviously felt kind of clever occasionally. I was like, ooh.
There you go.
But
It's not bad.
yeah, I mean, it's just Yeah, it's just
You sit
confessing
back and you're
my
like,
ego.
it's very good.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Um, I probably am most proud of Nothing to Say to the New York Times. Um, the last verse, I've got nothing to say to the courtroom of Pilate when he asks if I'm king of the Jews. It's the verse where I kind of pull the
You
veil and
shift. Yeah, you
where
shift to like reveal that like it's Jesus, right?
it's actually Jesus talking the whole time. And I talked to somebody recently who's like, oh, I didn't
I
realize
love
that it
songs
was
like that.
Jesus the whole time.
Like that's the
And
point.
I'm like, no,
It's
that is
like
the
the
point.
song
I
works.
would have plenty to say to the New York Times. You kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, or Fox News. They call if anybody cares what I say. I'd probably just. I mean, God forbid that I would be asked, but I would. I certainly. It's like, and that's the point. The point is, I would, but Christ is like, I don't. I've got no election. I'm not trying to. I don't know. There's like a. He's just not in it the same way we are. But I've got nothing to say to the courtroom of Pilate when he asks if I'm king of the Jews. Is it a query that's honest? Do you know the promise? Are you asking for them or for you? I have no words. I haven't already spoken. Today, back then, and tomorrow too. The only thing left that is to be said, a question to answer, not a book to be read, an ache in the heart, not a thought in the head. Who am I? Who am I to you? That feels like if I were trying to say something about what I think the voice of Christ is to our world. That's the closest that I've gotten to date to saying what I believe. Uh, you know, the question is to Christ. And the earlier in the song, I've got nothing to say to the crooks and the harlots, downcast with tears in their eyes. Got no life lessons, advice, or directions, just forgiveness and a real paradise. Um, And then a verse that actually didn't make the song. For God so loved the world and he sent me to save it. The good news is still good as new. This is deliverance and it makes all the difference when you realize God even loves you. Which I actually kind of like that. But it's just the idea. It's like this is very much the heart of reality. God is here to save people, and he's not here to take sides and condemn. Like he's here to save everybody, and um and what do you think about that? That's the question. Not,
Yeah.
God, what do you think about us and what our project? God's like, I'm here to save you. What do you think about that? Like, can I save you? Will you let me?
Well, I think those so American Gospel is very provocative and it hits hard. But I also I feel like the end of that the New York Times one was just very powerful. And then with the ending of Who Am I to You, like the folks who you are addressing and that I really do try to cultivate grace for, but the folks who have and there's like two levels too, right? Like it's much harder to cultivate grace to the frankly like insidious folks who are fueling all the things you talked about in the first couple verses of the American Gospel. But then there's the folks who kind of have gone astray because they're having a bad media diet or they're not cultivating
Yeah, sure.
discernment or they're not living in the real world talking to their neighbors. They're
Yeah.
only living online or what have you. Like I really
Yeah.
do want to cultivate grace for those people. And I think
Oh my
that
gosh, dude. No, thank you for saying
it's
that.
hard. It's hard.
I mean, here's the honest truth is I really don't like. I'm not a confrontational person by nature. I I feel a lot. I'm very much a feeler. There's a lot going on
That
inside.
makes sense as an
But I
artist.
don't I don't like, I'm not somebody. I enjoyed arguing with like people in college for fun because that way I was in this degree program and it was, but I don't enjoy it now. And I songs like this are teethy, and I would much rather, and I think the majority of my music and the majority of my calling actually my calling uh is to be, if I had to narrow down what the result of my music most often is, or what the hope is, it would be healing. I want the music to be healing, and I want it to be a place of encounter with people, with the Spirit of God, that it might find them, heal them, that they might find themselves and then find God right there at the very core of the deepest part of who they are. And that's my like 95%. And then but there's this other kind of prophetic edge that just feels like, yo, can we just like, can I just try to say a couple things about what it looks like from my perspective? And it's funny, those are the ones that, because of our age is so contentious, it's like those are the ones that people end up noticing the more, and asking me about, and which is fine.
Yeah, why do you hate America, John?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm happy to have those chats, but um, I would really rather spend so much more time um, pointing in a different direction. Because when with these kind of songs, I'm pointing at us, right? I'm pointing at the horizontal plane. And then the very last song, we need someone like Jesus. I'm trying to point up again. But the majority of my songs, I'm really just trying to, um, I'm trying to aim a little bit more vertically.
No, I appreciate that very much. And honestly, like when somebody with your track record who has been embraced, I'd say by I'd say a pretty wide swath of folks, like your
Mm.
devotional music, because I mean I grew up in a very conservative fundamentalist realm. I'm still connected with a number of people there,
Yeah,
both like lay folks and leadership folks, and with the
yeah,
podcast
for sure. Yep,
I've definitely had a few people in that camp on for the good things that they have. Like
100%.
I don't
Yeah,
really want to have podcasts on for confrontation, but
right.
I do get a little bit of a kick, and I think that it is, and honestly, like you talk about healing, like when something is broken or damaged or poisoned, like that needs to be addressed to be healed. But like part of me does get a kick when I'm like, oh, Jon Guerra came out with this. Like I bet some people who I know um might like I get excited. I'm like, oh, what are these people
Yeah,
gonna think when they
right.
hear those things? Like some of those more provocative statements and question that just like, and I've had this conversation, I think on the show, but so many times in person. I apologize. I just man, these kids are getting me sick here. I had this conversation with so many people. Like it's so insidious and just hard to watch that the enemy or profiteers or whoever really have been very successful in our time, like commingling those identities, like the
Mm,
socio-political and tribal identities with the religious and spiritual and theological identities, where people think to say, oh, this thing is bad, feels like I'm bad or the gospel is bad or my church
mm-hmm.
community is bad, and it's like,
Right.
well, they don't have to be. Like
Yeah,
you
right.
could examine these teachings and actions and policies that affect the lives of people and reject the wicked ones, and
Right.
then you'd be
100%.
good. Like
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not about you are fundamentally bad when we say, hey, this thing that you seem like you're supporting, let's talk about that. That seems pretty
Right.
harmful. They're like, what? And that's the whole like, what? Do you hate
Yeah.
America? And it's like,
Right.
well, no, but like, are you saying the totality of America is these harmful things? Like, that's not a thing to
Right.
love. Like,
Yeah,
just the
totally.
confusion of identity is just such a
Yeah.
hard thing to contend with, and there
Yeah.
really does need to be a lot of healing in that space.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And it is the I think goodness is compatible with a number of different beliefs. And I know, the kind of, oh, you don't play both sides is kind of, that's sort of a common pushback right now. And I do have views, I have positions, and I,
Good.
hold them, I would defend them. Um, but to say, the problem is the kind of subterranean premise that anybody who doesn't hold these particular positions there's no way that that person even loves their kids. There's no way that person would, um, you know, honor their word. Like that person is untrustworthy, or that, like, to think that goodness is not mutually exclusive with a certain set of positions. And so if that's the case, I think about this with different child, to make it a little bit less, but more personal, but less maybe contentious. Think of like the different ways people raise their kids. 100 years ago, people used to put babies outside in the cold because they thought that was that was helping them. Um, some people have different beliefs about the degree of spanking and the degree of, like, when you strike your kids, when you don't. And I don't think if you have one or the other of those, you are a good parent. That is not the totality of you as a parent, is whether or not you do these things. I have positions about that I'm living out with my child. And I could disagree with yours if yours is different. But over the course of however many years you get to be a parent, what defines you as a parent, that is just one part. That's not the whole part. I mean,
Sure.
unless you're abusive or something, in which case but the point is, I think a similar approaching in good faith is, but goodness, we all need that. We all need to be a little bit more, believe a little bit more that there's good people. Some, I presume, are good people.
Who have just
you know
been, yeah, gone astray. Well, and that's the thing too, for those of us who are critical of the American gospel as it is right now, to remember that, like, if we're counting ourselves as in the faith and trying to figure that out, that, like, we believe in a powerful God who can help, hopefully at some point, lead these people to progress past some of these things. We also, one of our questions, and this is one that in a way, shape, or form, I feel like we ask a lot of folks, but as an artist, as a creator, somebody who's very involved here and who gets to go abroad, like, what helps keep you anchored when you see, like, the modern Western church kind of just produce so much bad fruit? With a lot of the folks who embrace the labels of, like, deconstructing or evangelical, which is fine, but, like, they see all of the bad and rotten fruit and they're processing it in ways, like, how do you keep centered and anchored when you see so much bad fruit and you see a lot of folks in the church not see the American gospel as a bad thing? How do you kind of keep hope and keep anchored?
Man, yeah, I just I feel that God always has me kind of on a short leash, in the sense that, I try to keep my just proximity to Christ. I mean, I'm not sure what else to say. There's just something so beautiful about the person of Jesus, um, practically, to me. I mean, it's a deeply he's a deeply beautiful person and compelling person. And realizing prayer is not just a metaphysical list of, like, a wish list. Prayer is this subjecting yourself to that beauty that is present to you, not only in the Bible but in other places. It's a personal beauty, and it's a personal good that is present to you, and desirous of something, desirous of just unity with you and union with you. That is prayer. Opening yourself up to that, and inviting that in, and just saying yes. um, I I just could never. I can't imagine myself letting go of that. Though I've experienced deep hurt and deep pain in my life from various places, that piece has never felt. There's nothing else that's been more compelling to me than that. Um, and
So I
then,
guess
frankly,
maybe for listeners who are, like, going through that, how do you, any recommendations or encouragements on stewarding that pain and trying to figure out what to do with it?
I mean, this is going to sound, but take it to God. I really don't have anything else to say, and that sounds so youth groupy, but take that pain to God, whether in a journal, in your own mind, with a friend, sit together and have it out with God. Stop taking it to the youth pastor who hurt you. Stop taking it to the church that is just another version of the one you came from. Take it to God, And frankly, I think we are mistaken in thinking that the Western church is the only version of the church. We are actually
Yes,
not the only
very
version
much
of the
so.
church. I read a lot. In college, I was introduced to Orthodoxy. I read a lot from that wing of the Christian faith. It's a lot more, uh, I find it beautiful. It's foreign to me. So I find it beautiful and I find it new and I find it, my defenses are down and
It
Western
feels
theology.
larger. I've begun in the last
Yeah.
couple years to dabble. It feels bigger. Like it feels
Yeah.
that the space, and like I think about the words of Jesus, like my yoke is light, and it feels much more
Yeah.
like that in some ways.
So in some ways it is. In other ways, it's like they hold up as their. Here's my defense of orthodoxy in a second. If I was just going to make a pitch, everybody has heroes. Every church, every tradition, and there's exemplars of the faith. Who are the exemplars of the Western Church? Well, sometimes they're missionaries. Sometimes they're like famous. Usually they're famous pastors.
And yeah, that's the
If you
thing. Like
here's
modern
an
Western Christianity has that right now, guys.
exactly, or maybe they're like the kind of rich people at your church that get to be elders or something. I mean, this is a very cynical view, but I'm not saying, but
Well,
these
no,
are the
like a lot of the
exemplars.
big, like over the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of the big celebrity pastors have been dropping like flies with scandals and revelations and this and that. And it's
So, and
not that all the
my
other
point is
saints are
this,
perfect, but
and well, here's my point. Orthodoxy, they hold, and I guess Catholicism does this too. Um, there's a whole, they have saints, and these are not strong, powerful people. These are not celebrity people. These are people in whom was recognized one thing, usually, and that's humility. So it's people who, and we've met these people before, right? People in whom the light of God is so bright and is shining so that we're like, I just feel attracted to I feel this
it's
kind
like
of,
undeniable. Yeah.
and so there's something sane to me about having a tradition in which we elevate the humble, and after they die then we decide it, because no one gets sainted in their own lifetime, so there's that feels sane to me, that there's a tradition that says no, it's actually not this, it's actually maybe what Jesus said in Matthew 5. Let's find the people who are models of that and put them up on the pedestal after they die. So I find that sane.
I can't disagree with that. Well, John, before we get to your project and plugs, would love to do our shout out segment. So substance shout outs. What have you been enjoying lately? You're a guy of the arts. What have you been reading, watching, listening to, kind of taking in, and what have you been finding enjoying or edifying lately?
Yeah, I'm reading this book called The Song That I Am by, oh gosh, Elizabeth Labat. It was a book that was gifted to me. Uh, it's basically just a book about how music opens us up to God in a very unique way. She was a Cistercian nun, and it's a beautiful essay so far. Um, my wife and I just finished the show Shogun, which I thought was amazing.
Very nice. It's on
Um,
my list. It's won all the awards, and everyone I know who's
yeah,
watched it has said it's incredible.
yeah, I thought it was so good. I'm also making my way through the Chosen. It's taken a while, but I some good friends are a part of that and created that, and it's I it's powerful. It's
That is
not for
not a journey
everybody.
I've started yet, but I would like
Yeah,
to. I'm very curious about it, and enough people, because I mean,
yeah,
you would understand as a person of the arts. When I first heard about it, like I'm wary. I know what Christian media is like,
of course,
and
yeah. It subverts that. It really does. It really does subvert that expectation and that really well deserved reputation. Um,
Maybe I'll check it out and
Um,
hit you up and see about maybe getting a connection. Yeah, if it's as good as I've heard, I would maybe be interested in talking to some of those folks. I'm glad that it sounds like by all accounts that it is very good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I read Marilyn Robinson's Genesis book
Mm.
recently. That was tremendous. Rowan
I
Williams.
had to return that to the library, but that whenever she comes, like I always tell my friends, like
Yeah,
whenever Marilyn Robinson comes out with a book, we should all get like a week off from work and just
I know,
it should
dude.
be a holiday.
Yeah, no, sure. Her sentences are just every sentence deserves to be like inscribed in marble. It's so beautifully written. The Passions of the Soul by Rowan Williams is maybe the best book I've read in the last like 5 years. It's very, very, very good. Um, so those are the three that have been amazing to me lately. Um, Listening to, I'm not listening to much else besides what my daughter wants to listen to in the car. And then when I have a
Nice.
free moment, I'm listening to mixes. I'm producing quite a few projects right now. I'm working on my next record. So my listening for pleasure is kind of lower right now, which is fine. I go through seasons like this when I'm producing a lot. Um,
So you're a musician
but
then. Who's an artist who maybe that you think deserves to be more well known or acclaimed for his or her talent? Who do you think is an upcoming star or has the quality that more people should know about?
yeah, I mean, some of my favorites like Christian Lee Hudson. He's just a kind of a general market singer songwriter from LA. Ethan Gruska, I've liked a lot. I mean, Dawes, they're huge now, but love Taylor Goldsmith's songwriting so much. Um, there's this artist named Nick Chambers that I'm currently producing, who I think is absolutely phenomenal and absolutely beautiful. And another one, Tennille Tennille Neda, who I've worked with quite a bit past few years, whose voice is tremendous. Love her songs. You know, I like the stuff that I'm working on. I don't produce a ton of other people, and I don't have a ton of time, so I can be a bit selective. And the people that I worked with, I'm just fans of. So it's fun to be able to work on music that I would want to listen to and want people listening to.
Awesome. Well, hey,
Yeah,
thanks
man.
thanks for talking. I appreciate it. So, you got American Gospel out. Where do you want folks to go? What do you want them to follow? How can folks find out what you are putting out of yourself or others?
Yeah.
Where do you want to send folks?
Yeah, would love it if you sign up for the mailing list. So that's the best way. Instagram, Facebook, all those places are just the algorithms. You'll hardly ever see what I post, I'm sure, if you follow me there. So you go to my website, johnguerramusic.com. You can sign up for the mailing list, and I try to keep that an interesting list. There's a good number of people in there, and I don't send things like crazy, but I try to um, keep it something that I think people would be a lot of value for people. Um, and Catch me at a show. I'll be touring quite a bit this fall, the American Gospel Tour in the Northeast. And then next year, I will be touring even more for early next year, early 2025, um, in support of my next album. I'm hoping that it's out by then. I'm hoping that I'm done. I've just said that it's going to be done here. So I'm considering
Substance
it pressure.
exclusive. There you go.
Pressure, pressure to actually do it.
You coming to the Midwest?
Probably. Yep, probably.
Nice.
If you have any connections with churches in Kansas City, hit me up.
Oh yeah, no, there's a couple who the indie folks like there's one that always has Andrew Peterson whenever he's on a tour and folks like that.
Perfect. Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
some folks.
All right. Well, I'll holler at you.
Perfect. Well, John, this was great. Thanks for making time. The
Yeah,
work and the
man.
kid and the travel. It was really good to sit down and shout out to Sarah. It's always nice when listeners tag people who they want and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to talk with them." And then I have an excuse to reach out and so that was
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, man. Thanks for reaching out. Appreciate it.
So that was me and John. Had a great time with him. I would love to have him back on and maybe talk for a substantive cinema sometime. But that was really enjoyable. I really love his project. I hope you've checked it out. Links will be in the show notes for his project and some of the things that we mentioned. The best way to support the show, if it's something that you like and value, is always to share it with a friend. Put it on whatever social media platform you're on. Text it to a friend or family member if you think it may be enjoyable to them or something that is edifying, or if you have a particular episode in the library that every now and then you think about, like, oh, that was a good episode. Share it with somebody. Tell them, post about it. We love it. Or if you want to join the team, we do have the monthly support on, I believe, our Spotify link. Or you could always send us a couple bucks here and there at Cash App at $, the Substance Pod. We appreciate everybody who still does that. Got a lot of episodes in the bank. I am getting a little bit better at editing, and I am hoping that this current season we're in, part of why I've got all these episodes and didn't, life has been very crazy, but hoping to get in a little bit more regulated and regimented season. So hopefully, and you may even be seeing bonus episodes because I got a ton in the bank and a bunch of stuff ahead of me that I want to do. So hoping to get a bunch of episodes out to y'all. And I will shout out some shows that are not on our feed. I just had a wonderful conversation published with my friends over at Movies and Us. I've done their show a number of times before. I think I've shouted them out here. And actually, one of the episodes I have in the can is with the two ladies who host this show, Sarah and Jen. So Movies and Us, their closeout for the spooky season this year, I joined them to talk Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey Part 2. Not the most substantive film, I will say, but it was a lot of fun. Far, 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 far better than the original. And I had a great time. Also, if you're listening to this early, the week that it drops, it might not be out just yet. But if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that I will be on the first week's drop of Noirvember for the projection booth. I believe that comes out on Wednesday the 6th. I joined my buddy Mike White over there at the projection booth to talk Pitfall. It's a very subversive film noir that me and the other guest on the show, we both thought we had seen before, so we ended up watching it for the first time for the show and had a wonderful time. So if you're into classic films, older movies, crime movies, some of these like sordid moral tales, there is a lot of substance in these films actually. Check out the projection booth's feed, and we've got Pitfall there. Hopefully here very soon you'll see some substantive cinema for Noirvember. Got some good ones in the can and an exciting returning guest coming soon for that. So that's some of the stuff we've got coming up. Very much appreciate your listening minutes and hours. If you've been with us for a while, we appreciate you very much. If you want to send us a message, you can either send us an email or send a voice note to thesubstancepod@gmail.com. Or if there is an author or a advocate or somebody who's doing something interesting, or an artist who is making something interesting that you'd love for me to reach out and see if we could have a conversation here, feel free to send us a DM on Instagram or email us about that as well. Put that on the radar. That's actually how this episode came about. Once again, shout out to Sarah. Nice work. So that's our show for this week. I've been your host, Philip Marinello. Tune in next time we have an episode, which will hopefully not be too long. And we will see you then on The Substance.